In this lesson, we are going to be learning how to name ions, specifically monatomic ions. For you see, there are two classifications of ions. There are what we call monatomic ions and polyatomic ions. Monoatomic is an ion with only one atom. Polyatomic is an ion with two or more atoms. The focus of this lesson is going to be on monoatomic ions. Now let's just get this vocabulary term out in the open here. This is oxidation number. This is the charge of the ion. And let's take a look at where we would put that in the old AZX symbol. In an AZX symbol, of course, the X is the element symbol itself. Z is the atomic number. A is the mass number. And what we have over here is what is called the oxidation number. And of course that is, as we said, it is the charge of the ion. The charge of the ion can be determined if you take the number of protons, which of course is the atomic number, and you subtract the number of electrons that a particular atom has. If you take the protons and subtract the number of electrons, that will give you the oxidation number. Protons minus electrons will give you the oxidation number. So this is where we would put that. It would be either a plus number or a negative number. If it ends up having a positive charge, we call it a cation. If it ends up having a negative charge, we call it an anion. Okay. Monatomic ions, we can find their charges listed on the periodic table. Now, in your reference table booklets, you have a periodic table that looks like this, right? And so we can find the charge in the upper right corner. All the different possibilities for the charges are listed in the upper right corner. So those are the oxidation number, right? So it's even here in the key, the selected oxidation states. This just means that these ions may have more possibilities for what charge they can take, but these are certainly the most common ones that you would need to know. Okay, so this table right here is sort of even a more selected version of what we just saw in your reference tables. Okay. So we know that group 1 ions form a +1 ion, group 2 ions form a +2 ion. These are what we call the transition metals. Let's do this, the transition. And we'll be talking about those in just a moment. And of course over here, let's see. These are everything over here. Everything on this side are just metals with a specific category of transition metals here. And then, of course, everybody over here are the non-metal ions. Now, you might notice that the charges here are listed with the number first, followed by the sign. So, for example, you could say oxide 2- or oxide -2. That's either way that you want to represent that charge is fine for this class. All right, so let's talk about naming these ions. When we are naming monatomic ions, let's talk about these three types of ions. We're going to talk about metal ions, transition metal ions, and we're going to talk about non-metal ions, because there are little things to notice about each one. Metal ions are always going to be cations. And what we see here is that we have Na+1, Zn+2, Al+3. The name of these ions are very straightforward. Na is sodium, so this is the sodium ion. Zn is zinc, so this is the zinc ion. Al is aluminum, so this is the aluminum ion. Okay. So when naming these ions, did we change the name of the element? The answer is no. The element name stayed the same as when we called it the ion name. Okay? So metal ions, you don't change the name of the element itself. Transition metals, also cations, but these have multiple oxidation numbers. So for example, when we go take a look at these right here, okay, there is a group of metals here in the middle. Most of them are transition metals, but there's a couple over here as well. There are some metals that can have more than one possible oxidation number. And for these elements and these elements alone, we're going to have to be very specific to tell people, are we referring to the iron 3+ ion, or are we referring to the iron 2+ ion? Okay, so we are going to need to indicate that. To do this, we are going to use what are called Roman numerals. Okay, Roman numerals, if you don't know your Roman numerals, basically it's this. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is an I before a V. 5 is a V. 6 is a VI. Generally, they don't go past 5 or 6, but these are indeed the Roman numerals that we're going to be drawing from. So these are metals. We're not going to change the name of the element. So Cu is the element copper. So this is still copper. But because copper can either be a +1 or a +2, we need to indicate which one it is. And simply, if it's a +1, this is copper 1 ion. Cu +2 is the copper 2 ion. So notice what we did. We took the Roman numeral of the charge and we put it in parentheses. So copper 1 just means copper +1. Copper 2 is copper +2. Iron. Iron can either be a +2 or a +3. So this is iron. If it's a +2, we're going to use Roman numeral 2 to tell everybody which ion it is. Fe +3 is going to be iron, Roman numeral 3. Pb +2, Pb is lead. +2, Roman numeral 2. Pb +4, lead, Roman numeral 4 ion. Okay, so for any element that is on the periodic table that has more than one possible charge, specifically not any element, but the metals that are, they tend to be here in the middle of the periodic table, you will have to recognize that they are going to need Roman numerals. Just to give you an idea, the most common ones are across the top: titanium, vanadium, chromium, manganese, iron, copper, nickel, cobalt, nickel, copper, not zinc, not cadmium, not silver, okay, palladium, gold, mercury, tin, lead, okay. Those are the ions that you will need to specify what charge they are with a Roman numeral. All right, lastly, let's take a look at nonmetal ions. Nonmetal ions tend to be the anions. Examples, we have S-2, Br -1, and N-3. These elements, right, so S is sulfur, but when we are naming anions, we do not keep the element name the same. We chop off the ending, an ending that makes sense, and we are going to replace it with "ide." So this becomes the sulfide ion. Bromine is the element. Br -1, we're going to take off the INE and we're going to make it the bromide ion. N is nitrogen. We are going to make this nitride ion. So when naming these ions, did we change the name of the element? Yes. We change the ending, which is called the suffix, to "ide." Now there's some strange elements that can do this, or it's the strange names that you might not have ever heard of before. C-4 is called carbide. O-2 is oxide. I'm sure you've heard of that one. F-1 is fluoride. You've heard of that. It's in your toothpaste. P minus 3 is phosphide. And yeah, those are the most common ones. Of course, you've heard of Cl minus 1. You know this is chloride. So you've heard some of these, but now you know that the reason why they have the IDE ending when they're in an ionic compound is because they are anions, and that's what we do with anion names. All right, in this lesson, we have learned what monatomic ions are, and we have learned how to name them based on whether or not they are a metal ion, if they are a transition metal with multiple oxidation states, and we've learned how to name nonmetal ions. All right, that's it for this lesson. We'll see you back in the classroom.